Good afternoon, students. I am Ms. Justina Namopala. I am your tutor for English 1. These are my contact details. In case you have any questions before we start with the presentation, I'm going to give them to you. My cell phone number is 081-610-9072. My email address is justytutunga@gmail.com. Sorry, I think there's just an error there. It's supposed to be justytutunga@gmail.com. Students, welcome to English 1. I wish you all to be hardworking, dedicated, and self-determined students in this course. This presentation covers the subject content in brief and some general guidelines that I want everyone to keep in mind when preparing for the 2020 examination. I will discuss some of the content in the study guide in order to help you prepare for the coming exams. By now, you should have a good idea what the subject is about, as you have already completed an assignment. Please use the study guide to prepare for the examination. It is very important that you pay attention to the exit learning outcomes in the index of the study guide. Also, please pay attention to the learning outcomes of every unit in the study guide. This will help you in knowing what you are supposed to know in the study guide and the whole module. Also, please pay attention to the verbs. Pay attention to the introductory verbs that introduce the question. Verbs such as discuss, list, define, describe, argue, compare, and contrast, so that you are aware of what the question is asking you to do. Please study these verbs. They are at the beginning in your study guide. This is what I would like you to touch on when you are preparing for the examination. Before we start, please take note that this presentation does not specify that it is for which exam, but it is for all the 3 exams that you will write in 2020, the April exams, the August exams, as well as the November exams. I urge all of you to please take this presentation seriously, because this is what will guide you when you prepare for the examination. Under Unit 1, this is what you should look at. Please look at the areas of language skills, which are morphology, phonology, syntax, semantics, and pragmatics. You should be able to explain what is phonology and give examples if need be. You should be able to differentiate between these 5 areas of language skills, explain them. Also, you should give examples to support your answers. Also, please look at the difference between primary and second language. I think that word is supposed to be secondary language. Study the difference between primary and secondary language. Explain what is primary language. Also give examples to support your answer, and also explain what is second language, and give examples. In unit 1, again, we have informal language. Under informal language, we have different subtopics such as subjectivity and objectivity. Please be aware of what is the difference between subjectivity and objectivity. Differentiate between a fact and an opinion. You should not only know how to explain this informal language, but you should be able to determine that this is a fact or that is an opinion. You are not only required to study the meaning of the informal language, but also be aware of the fact that there can be examples provided of which you are to choose whether it's a fact or an opinion, whether it's bias or prejudice, or whether it is denotation and connotation. Also, please take note that for every informal language, you must be able to provide the relevant examples that support your answers. Under Unit 1, again, we have you should study the Namibian rational and aims for English for the upper primary learners. These are all in the study guide, so please go study the Namibian rational and aims for English for the upper primary learners. What does it say relating to the aims for English for the upper primary learners in Namibia? Under Unit 2, please look at the areas of language development, such as the constructivist approach of language development, the behaviorist perspective of language development, the interactionist perspective of language development. As a teacher, you must be able to explain all these three on its own by providing relevant examples. You explain to us what happens under the behaviorist perspective of language development, also under the constructivist approach, as well as the interactionist perspective of language development. In other words, study the all the approaches to language development. You should also look at how the communicative language teaching is the best approach a teacher can use in the English speaking lessons. Why is it efficient, or why is it important for a teacher to use communicative language teaching in their speaking lessons? You must be able to explain this. Also, please explain how the external physical learning environment is important to academic performance as the learning instruction. How is the external physical learning environment important to academic performance as the learning instruction? You must also look at the relationship between language and cognition, as well as other domains of child development. I repeat, please look at the relationship between language and cognition, as well as the other domains of child development. You must be able to outline the physical characteristics of upper primary learners. You must be able to outline and discuss the physical characteristics of upper primary learners, because these are the ones you are going to be teaching. You must also explain how a teacher can create a good language learning environment for their learners? How would you make your classroom conducive for every learner that comes into your class? How are you going to make it a learning environment, a good language learning environment? Under Unit 3, please study the good listening skills. The good listening skills, they are in the study guide. Please make use of your study guide. Study the TQLR strategy for preparation for listening. How would you use the TQLR strategy for preparation for listening when you give a lesson? Also, please differentiate or name and explain the different types of assessments that are used in schools, most especially the primary schools. You must also outline the importance of stories, how stories are important not only to the teacher but also to the learners as well as the community at large. Also, please look at the 3 language skills involved in pragmatic communication skills. What are the 3 language skills involved in pragmatic communication skills? Also, please know how to use songs when teaching listening. Explain how to use a certain song when you are teaching listening. I advise that you please give examples of such songs and why you have decided to pick such a song. Also, you must be able to explain or suggest what a teacher can do, or rather what a learner can do to become a good listener. Students, these are the chapters that appear in our study guide. Since we only have 3 units, that is what I would like you to tackle when you are preparing for your examination. Should you have any other further questions, please do not hesitate to contact me on my contact details that I've given earlier on. Now, students, this is what I would like you to do when you go into the exam room. This is what I would like you to do when you go into the exam room. Please read the instructions and questions carefully. As a teacher, you must always use practical examples where necessary to strengthen your answers. Please provide as many examples as possible to ensure that you understand what you have written. Also, please provide sufficient answers, meaning that don't write too little or too much. Also, check the marks allocated to determine the length of your answer. The marks you have for each question will determine whether you should write too little or too much. So it is very important that you acknowledge the marks. Students, please don't try to memorize everything in the study guide. Read your instructions carefully before you start writing. Your answers must always be complete. Use your punctuation marks because this is an English module. It is an English course and you are going to teach these learners English. Therefore, you must be able to communicate well in the English language. Write as neatly as you can. Do not write beyond the lines. Only write on the lines that are provided for you. Also, please don't add lines on your own. Do not take a ruler and provide lines for yourselves in your question paper. Like I said earlier, please write full sentences and don't write long sentences. Do not copy exactly what it is in the study guide. Use your own examples. This will ensure that you have really studied and you understand that certain topic that you are being asked on. Before you start writing, understand what is asked of you. Do not write unnecessary facts or ideas that are not relevant to the question. Also, please take note of the marks allocated. Like I said before, this will determine how many points you are supposed to write. Let's say if a question has 20 marks, if it is not indicated in brackets that each point is 2 marks, you are supposed to write 10 facts, give 10 points, of which each point is 2 marks. It is very important that you take into account the marks allocated per question. Like I said before, please make sure you understand the question before you attempt to study. I advise students to call or text their tutor to explain anything that appears in the study guide and that you do not understand. I will gladly do so. Students, grammar rules should apply as such. Use your grammar rules correctly in order for you to gain marks. Please don't leave questions unanswered. Put in more effort and make sure you understand. This is all I had for you, dear students. Good luck with your examinations. All the best. I thank you.